The little girl didn't know her whisper would stop a stranger in her tracks. As moving boxes sat unopened beneath the afternoon sun, she looked at the woman carrying flowers into the house next door and quietly confessed something no child should ever have to worry about. She said her daddy forgot to eat whenever he was scared, smiled whenever he wanted to cry, and always told her he wasn't hungry so she could have the last sandwich. The new neighbor stood frozen, her eyes filling with tears before she had even learned the father's name. She had moved there hoping for a fresh start, but she had no idea she was about to step into a story that would heal two broken hearts at once. If you believe kindness can change lives, forgiveness is stronger than anger, hope always deserves another chance, and love often begins with compassion, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, and subscribe to our channel so our community can continue sharing stories that remind us the world is still filled with good people. Graham Holloway had never planned to raise a child alone. 5 years earlier, he and his wife had imagined birthdays, family holidays, and growing old together in the small blue house they had spent years saving to buy. Those dreams disappeared the day his wife, Natalie, lost her life after a sudden illness that no doctor had expected to become fatal. In a single afternoon, Graham became both mother and father to their 4-year-old daughter, Poppy. Grief never truly left him. It simply learned to hide behind routines. Every morning began before sunrise. Graham packed Poppy's lunch, braided her hair after watching countless tutorials because he refused to let her go to school feeling different from the other girls, cleaned the kitchen, worked remotely as an architectural designer, collected her from school, helped with homework, cooked dinner, and smiled through every conversation. The smile wasn't fake. It was simply tired. His biggest fear wasn't loneliness. It was failing his daughter. When bills became harder to manage after several construction projects were unexpectedly cancelled, Graham quietly stopped spending money on himself. He skipped breakfast first. Then lunch. Eventually he convinced himself coffee was enough until evening. Poppy noticed. Children always notice what adults believe they hide. She watched her father push food around his plate before claiming he had eaten earlier. She saw him reading unpaid invoices while pretending to watch cartoons beside her. She heard him sigh whenever another letter arrived through the front door. He never complained. He simply carried everything alone. Next door, Evelyn Carter arrived with a moving van and a heart carrying its own invisible weight. At 34, she had recently left a demanding hospital administration job after months of emotional exhaustion. Caring for patients without ever truly being able to save everyone had slowly drained every piece of joy from her life. She purchased the small neighboring house hoping peace might finally find her. Instead, her first afternoon brought her face to face with a little girl carrying a watering can almost as large as herself. Poppy loved flowers because her mother once said every garden became happier when someone cared for it. She happily introduced herself before proudly explaining which plants belonged to her daddy. Then, almost as an afterthought, she quietly shared the secret she had carried for weeks. She admitted her daddy forgot to eat whenever he worried because he always wanted to make sure she had enough first. The words weren't dramatic. They were innocent. That innocence made them heartbreaking. Evelyn looked toward the neighboring house. Through the kitchen window she saw Graham sitting alone with a mug of coffee and several unopened envelopes spread across the table. His untouched plate rested beside him. Poppy hadn't exaggerated. That afternoon Evelyn baked far more vegetable soup than one person could possibly finish. She knocked gently on Graham's door, apologized for interrupting, and explained she had accidentally cooked too much. Graham politely refused at first. Pride often disguises itself as independence. Eventually, after noticing Poppy's hopeful smile, he accepted. For the first time in weeks, he ate an entire meal before it became cold. Neither realized how important that simple bowl of soup would become. Days slowly turned into weeks. Their friendship developed naturally beneath warm afternoon skies. Whenever Evelyn baked bread, an extra loaf somehow appeared next door. Whenever Graham repaired something around his own house, he quietly fixed loose fence panels or squeaky gates at Evelyn's home without mentioning it. Neither kept score. Kindness flowed comfortably between them. Poppy quickly became the bridge connecting two lonely adults. She insisted flowers looked better when planted across both gardens instead of only one. She organized pretend tea parties on sunny weekends using mismatched cups and biscuits. Sometimes she simply sat drawing colorful pictures while Graham and Evelyn talked about ordinary things that somehow made difficult days feel lighter. For the first time since losing Natalie, Graham laughed without feeling guilty. For the first time in years, Evelyn returned home looking forward to tomorrow instead of merely surviving today. Yet life rarely allows healing without testing it first. One afternoon Graham received devastating news. The architecture firm employing him announced unexpected restructuring. His position would end within 6 weeks. Although severance pay offered temporary relief, the future suddenly looked frighteningly uncertain. He thanked the manager politely. Then walked home carrying invisible panic heavier than any briefcase. He said nothing to Poppy. He smiled as always. That evening he quietly skipped dinner. Again. Poppy noticed immediately. The following afternoon, while helping Evelyn water newly planted roses, she innocently admitted Daddy hadn't eaten properly again because his worried face had returned. Evelyn's heart sank. She understood now that food had become Graham's silent sacrifice whenever fear entered his life. Instead of confronting him directly, she chose compassion over embarrassment. The next morning she invited both father and daughter for lunch, pretending she wanted help testing a new recipe. Graham accepted only because Poppy became wonderfully excited. During lunch Evelyn gently shifted the conversation toward work. Without judgment, without pity, simply listening. Something unexpected happened. Graham spoke honestly. He admitted he was terrified. Not of unemployment itself. Of disappointing the one little person depending entirely on him. He confessed he still felt responsible for failing his wife because he couldn't save her, even though every doctor insisted nothing more could have been done. Years of unspoken grief surfaced quietly between bites of homemade bread. Evelyn didn't offer perfect advice. She offered understanding. Sometimes that matters more. Inspired by Graham's talent, Evelyn contacted several former hospital colleagues responsible for planning new medical facilities. She remembered architects were needed for upcoming community healthcare projects. She never promised anything. She simply passed along his portfolio. Weeks later Graham received an interview invitation. Then another. Soon 3 companies competed to hire him because his designs combined practicality with warmth rarely found in modern buildings. One project especially touched him. Designing a children's rehabilitation center. He poured every memory of fatherhood into those plans. Wide hallways for wheelchairs. Sunlit playrooms. Quiet reading corners. Family kitchens where parents could share meals during long treatments. His work won unanimous approval. The contract secured his financial future. When Graham received the news, his first instinct wasn't celebration. It was buying proper groceries. Poppy watched happily as fruit, vegetables, fresh bread, and ingredients filled cupboards that had looked worryingly empty only weeks earlier. The little girl quietly smiled. Daddy was eating again. Meanwhile, Evelyn discovered healing in unexpected ways herself. Watching Graham's devotion to Poppy reminded her why she had chosen healthcare years earlier. She hadn't become exhausted because she stopped caring. She became exhausted because she cared too deeply. Rather than returning to the same demanding administrative role, she accepted a new position coordinating family support programs for children's clinics. The work allowed compassion to remain at the center of every decision. Months passed. The neighboring gardens slowly merged into one colorful landscape where flowers ignored property boundaries. Children from nearby houses gathered to play beneath blooming trees. Neighbors who once exchanged polite waves now shared afternoon picnics. One act of kindness had quietly transformed an entire street. Then came another unexpected challenge. A severe summer storm damaged several homes in the neighborhood. Although no one suffered serious injuries, many gardens, fences, and roofs required repair. Without waiting for insurance assessments, Graham organized neighbors to help one another. Carpenters repaired broken gates. Electricians checked wiring. Gardeners replanted damaged flower beds. Evelyn coordinated meals for affected families. Poppy proudly delivered sandwiches with a little handwritten note saying everyone deserved lunch. Watching the community unite reminded Graham of something Natalie once believed. People become strongest when they carry each other's burdens instead of pretending they have none. The local newspaper featured the neighborhood's remarkable cooperation. Reporters praised community spirit. They never discovered the movement began because one little girl worried her father wasn't eating. Another year passed beneath countless sunny afternoons. The Children's Rehabilitation Center officially opened. Families toured bright welcoming spaces designed with extraordinary care. During the opening ceremony, Graham quietly stepped aside, preferring to watch children laughing inside rooms that once existed only as sketches. One mother approached him with tears in her eyes. She explained the family kitchen meant she could finally eat meals beside her recovering son instead of alone in hospital corridors. Graham realized architecture wasn't simply about buildings. It was about hope. Later that afternoon he returned home carrying fresh bread from a local bakery. Without thinking, he placed an extra loaf on Evelyn's doorstep. She laughed when she opened the door because she had just finished baking apple pie for Graham and Poppy. Neither spoke. Both smiled. Some friendships quietly become family long before anyone says so. As seasons changed, Graham found himself looking toward the neighboring garden more often than he realized. Not because loneliness frightened him anymore. Because happiness no longer did. One bright spring afternoon, while Poppy chased butterflies among blooming flowers, Graham thanked Evelyn for seeing what he had tried so hard to hide. She gently reminded him that she hadn't saved him. Poppy had. A little girl's love simply allowed someone else to help. Years later, neighbors often joked they couldn't remember where one garden ended and the other began. Neither could Graham or Evelyn. Eventually they stopped living as neighbors separated by a fence and began building a shared future filled with laughter, family meals, weekend gardening, and quiet afternoons where no one ever had to pretend they weren't struggling. Poppy grew into a compassionate young woman who always carried extra snacks in her school bag because she never forgot the afternoons when her father believed hunger was easier than worry. Whenever friends asked why she did it, she simply smiled and said everyone deserves someone who notices. Before we reach the end of this story, we'd love to hear from you. Please leave a meaningful comment and tell us this. Has someone ever noticed your silent struggles before you asked for help, or have you been that person for someone else? Your story could become the encouragement another viewer needs today. As golden afternoon sunlight drifted across the now shared garden, Graham watched Poppy laughing beside Evelyn while fresh bread cooled on the kitchen windowsill. For the first time in many years, he realized he wasn't carrying life's burdens alone anymore. Love had returned quietly, not through grand promises or extraordinary miracles, but through a bowl of soup, a caring neighbor, and the honest words of a little girl who refused to let her father suffer in silence. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Always remember that the people who love us often notice our silent battles long before we speak them aloud, and sometimes the bravest thing we can do is allow kindness to find its way into our lives.